The forest around Eli Turner's cabin was always quiet, calm and far from the rest of the galaxy. Birds sang in the tall, blue-leafed trees, and the creek behind his small wooden home whispered like soft music every night. Eli liked it that way. He had come to this faraway planet known only as Pharaon 3 to live a life of peace. No noise, no war, no people, just nature and silence. But one night the silence broke. It was late, close to midnight. The moons were high and their silver light danced across the rippling water. Eli sat by his window, fixing an old plasma lantern when he heard something strange. A soft splash, followed by a faint rustle. At first he thought it was just the creek playing tricks again. But then came another sound, a voice. A soft, trembling hum. Eli froze. No one lived nearby. The nearest settlement was 50 miles away. He stood up, reached for his old flashlight, and stepped out onto the cool soil. The night air smelled of pine and rain. The sound came again, this time clearer. Someone was moving in the water. He followed the path behind his cabin, heart beating faster. The moonlight grew brighter as he approached the creek, and soon he saw the source of the sound. There, standing knee-deep in the glowing water, was a woman, or at least she looked like one. Her skin shimmered with a soft teal glow, like moonlight trapped beneath the surface. Her hair was long, silver-white, and it flowed over her shoulders like silk. Her back was turned to him and she was bathing quietly, washing something dark from her arms. For a moment, Eli forgot to breathe. She was beautiful but not human. Then she moved slightly and he saw the truth. The water around her was red. Blood. Eli stepped forward without thinking, his boots crunching against the pebbles. A twig snapped beneath his foot. The sound echoed in the quiet night. The alien woman turned sharply. Her eyes met his, glowing faintly gold in the moonlight. For a second, fear flashed across her face, then exhaustion. She swayed, trying to lift her hand as if to warn him away, but her strength failed. She whispered something in a language he didn't know, stumbled forward, and collapsed in the shallow water. Hey, it's okay, Eli shouted, running toward her. He dropped his flashlight and lifted her out of the creek. Her body was cold, her pulse weak. The side of her arm was burned and bleeding badly. He carried her back toward the cabin, her light skin flickering faintly like a dying ember. She was lighter than she looked, and he could feel the faint rhythm of her heartbeat against his chest. Inside the cabin, Eli laid her gently on the couch near the fire. He grabbed a towel, wrapped her up, and checked her wounds. The burn marks were deep, but they didn't look natural, almost like she'd been shocked by energy weapons. He cleaned the blood away carefully. The alien stirred and groaned softly. When her eyes fluttered open again, she looked terrified. "Don't call patrol," she whispered in broken common tongue. Her voice was fragile but clear. Eli blinked. "Patrol? You mean someone's after you?" She tried to nod but was too weak. "Please," she breathed, "no soldiers. No signal." Then her head tilted back and she fainted again. Eli sat there in silence, the small cabin now feeling too small, too bright, too loud. He looked at her face, the gentle lines, the way her silver hair caught the light. She didn't look like a criminal. She looked like someone running from something worse. He sighed and reached for the med kit he hadn't used in years. "Well," he muttered, "you picked a bad night to fall into my creek." Outside, the forest was quiet again. Only the sound of the creek filled the air, steady and calm, as if nothing strange had happened. But Eli knew his life had just changed. He stayed awake through the night, watching over the alien as she slept by the fire. Sometimes she murmured words in her own language, names maybe, or memories. Once she whispered a word that almost sounded like freedom. Eli leaned back in his chair, staring into the flames. Who was she? Where had she come from? Why was she bleeding in his creek, far from any city or ship? The answers would come later. For now there was only the firelight, the cold forest outside, and the sound of water flowing. Quiet, endless, and waiting. When dawn broke, the first sunlight touched the cabin windows. The alien woman was still asleep, breathing softly, her hand resting near the edge of the blanket. Eli stood stretched and looked out the window toward the creek. A faint red stain still flowed downstream, disappearing into the distance. He knew one thing for sure. Whatever had happened to her wasn't over. And whoever she was running from, they might already be looking for her. The forest, once his peaceful home, suddenly felt like the edge of something dangerous. And Eli Turner, a simple man who wanted quiet, had just stepped into a story that would echo across the stars. Morning light crept into the cabin, soft and golden. The fire had burned low through the night and only a few embers glowed in the hearth. Eli sat in his old wooden chair, half awake, staring at the alien woman still lying on his couch. He had wrapped her wounds, cleaned the burns, and covered her with a blanket. But he still didn't know what to do with her. When she finally stirred, her eyes flickered open, deep gold, bright against her pale teal skin. For a moment she looked lost, confused by the wooden walls, the smell of smoke, and the human sitting nearby. Then panic crossed her face. She tried to sit up too fast, and pain shot through her arm. She gasped softly. "Easy," Eli said, raising a hand. "You're hurt. Don't move too much." The alien woman looked around as if expecting to see guards or soldiers. Her voice trembled when she spoke. Where am I?" "My cabin," Eli answered. "Behind the creek. You collapsed last night. I brought you in." She stared at him like she couldn't believe he had helped her. Slowly, she touched her bandaged arm, tracing the wrap with her slender fingers. "You didn't call them?" she asked quietly. "Call who?" "The patrol." Her eyes darted toward the door. "They follow?" "They always follow," Eli frowned. "No one's coming here. Not unless you led them." The alien said nothing, just looked down. The light caught her hair, silver strands glowing like threads of glass. He noticed faint scars along her neck and a mark on her wrist that looked like a metal shackle burn. "What's your name?" he asked gently. For a moment she hesitated, as if remembering it was dangerous to answer. Then she said, "Lyra." Eli nodded slowly. "I'm Eli. You're safe for now, Lyra, but I need to know who's after you." She pressed her lips together. "You should not have helped me. They hurt everyone who does." "I'll take my chances," he said simply. "You were bleeding in my creek. I couldn't just walk away." Her golden eyes softened a little. No one had spoken to her like that in a long time. After a pause, she whispered, "I was part of the Venari Empire, Research Division. They told me I was helping my people, until I found out what we were doing." Her voice shook. "They captured humans, experimented on them. Your kind." Eli's hand froze halfway to the kettle. "Experimented?" Lyra nodded. "They called it study for peace, guys, but it was torture. I helped them escape. I opened the cages. I thought I could run too." Her voice cracked and tears glimmered in her eyes. "But they found me. They burned me as punishment. I hid in the forest. Then I saw the water and I couldn't run anymore." Silence filled the cabin. Only the soft crackle of the dying fire broke it. Eli leaned forward. "So you're telling me the Empire, the same one that trades with human colonies, is hunting you because you saved humans?" Lyra nodded weakly. He sighed and rubbed his face. "Well, that explains the bounty posters I've been seeing. A Venari trader wanted alive." Her eyes widened. "You've seen them?" "Yeah," he said. "Didn't expect her to collapse in my backyard, though." That made her smile faintly for the first time. "You're strange for a human." "I get that a lot," he said, handing her a cup of warm water. Lyra took it carefully, her hands trembling. She drank slowly, her throat moving as if each sip cost her strength. Then she reached into the small satchel still tied around her waist and pulled out a small crystal glowing faint blue. "This," she said softly, "is why they can't find me." Eli looked at it. "What is it?" "Evidence. Records of everything they did. If this reaches the human networks, it will expose them." She held it tightly. "But they know I have it. That's why they won't stop." Eli stared at her for a long moment. He wasn't a soldier anymore. He wasn't anyone special. Just a man who fixed things, hunted for food, and tried to stay out of trouble. But now trouble had found him, and it had a face. He looked at Lyra, tired and wounded, still trying to protect something far bigger than herself. "Then we'll keep it safe," he said quietly. Her eyes widened again. "You would risk your life for me?" Eli shrugged. "Guess so. You're in my cabin. That makes you my responsibility." Outside, a faint humming echoed in the distance. Lyra's head turned sharply toward the window. The sound was mechanical, sharp, and growing louder. Her golden eyes widened with fear. "They found us." Eli stood up, grabbed his old plasma rifle from the wall, and moved to the door. "Stay low," he said. "Don't make a sound." Through the window, the forest glowed with flickering lights, search drones drifting between the trees. Lyra's hands shook. If they see me, they won't, Eli interrupted. Not tonight. He stepped outside, heart pounding, scanning the sky. The drones hummed like angry bees above the trees, their blue eyes searching the ground. Eli took a deep breath, flipped off the safety on his rifle, and aimed at the nearest one. The first shot cracked through the air like thunder. A spark exploded in the distance and one drone fell from the sky. The others turned, scanning for movement. Eli ducked behind a tree, breathing hard. Inside the cabin, Lyra clutched the glowing crystal to her chest and whispered something in her language, a prayer or a promise. The quiet life behind the creek was gone forever, and both of them knew it. The human had chosen a side, and now the chase had truly begun. Night had fallen again, but Eli Turner's cabin no longer felt peaceful. Smoke drifted through the air from the wreckage of a downed drone, still sparking in the forest beyond. Eli had buried its remains under rocks by the creek, hoping the patrol wouldn't trace it back to him. Inside, the alien woman sat near the dim firelight, silent and pale, her golden eyes reflecting the flames. Lyra hadn't said a word in hours. Her wounds had reopened from the stress of hiding, but she didn't complain. She only stared at the stars through the cracked window as if counting them. Eli handed her a mug of warm herbal tea. "You should rest," he said quietly. She shook her head. "They won't stop. They will come again. More of them. Then we'll be ready," Eli replied. Lyra looked at him as though she didn't understand his calmness. "You risk your life for me, human, why?" Eli sat across from her, his rifle leaning against the table. "You said you saved humans once. Guess I'm just returning the favor." She stared into her tea. "No one ever saved me before." Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. Somewhere far away, a creature howled, echoing through the valley. Eli listened, his instincts on edge. "Tell me more about that crystal," he said. "You said it holds evidence." Lyra hesitated. Then she reached into her satchel and placed the small blue crystal on the table. It glowed softly, like a heartbeat. She touched it with her fingertip, and a shimmer of light rose above it. Tiny images, voices, and symbols forming in the air. Eli leaned closer. He saw humans, men and women, locked in cages made of energy. Some were unconscious. Others were screaming. Alien scientists moved around them, writing on glowing tablets, speaking in a cold, detached tone. Eli's jaw tightened. "They really did this?" Lyra nodded slowly. "The Venari call it the Project Harmony. They claim they're studying your species to understand emotional control. But they are building weapons. Using your brain signals." Eli clenched his fists. "You stopped it." "I tried," Lyra whispered. "But I was only a researcher. When I released the captives, I was branded a traitor. They destroyed my rank, my home, my people." Her voice cracked. "My own sister led the chase to capture me." For a long moment, the cabin was silent except for the soft hum of the crystal. Eli leaned back in his chair, trying to process it all. "So you came here to hide?" Lyra nodded. "I heard rumors that humans settled near this border world. I thought maybe they would protect me, but the Empire's reach is long." Eli rubbed his face. "If they're after you, they'll sweep this whole forest soon." Lyra's hands trembled as she picked up the crystal. "There's a communication post near the old mining ridge 20 kilometers north. If I can send this data there, it will reach the human networks. Everyone will know the truth." "Then that's what we'll do," Eli said. Lyra looked up sharply. "You mean, help me?" He gave a half smile. "You think I can just go back to fixing lanterns after seeing this?" For the first time, her lips curved into a real smile. It was small, tired, but real. She whispered, "You're strange, Eli Turner." "I get that a lot," he said again. Suddenly, a red light flashed across the window, brief, sharp, and deadly. Both of them froze. Eli grabbed his rifle and motioned for Lyra to stay down. He crept to the door, lifted the latch quietly, and peered outside. A patrol drone floated near the treetops, scanning the ground with a crimson beam. "Damn," Eli muttered. "They're back already." Lyra reached for the crystal, holding it tight against her chest. "If they capture me, they will erase everything. You must destroy it before that happens." Eli turned to her, his face set. "Not happening. You're not dying here. And neither is the truth." He opened a hidden trapdoor beneath the rug, revealing a crawl space lined with old crates and tools. "Hide there. Don't move until I tell you." Lyra hesitated. "What about you? I'll make sure they don't search this far." He closed the trapdoor after her and moved toward the window, keeping low. The red beam passed again, scanning closer this time. He could hear faint voices in the distance, metallic through helmets speaking in the alien language Lyra used earlier. "Search perimeter east," one voice commanded. "Energy residue detected." Eli cursed under his breath. He aimed at the drone and fired once, precise and silent. The beam flickered, then died. The drone spiraled into the trees with a muffled crash. The forest went still again. Only the creek whispered. He waited several minutes before opening the trapdoor. Lyra crawled out slowly, her face pale. "You shouldn't have done that," she said softly. "Too late," Eli replied, reloading his rifle. "They'll come back with more." Lyra nodded, clutching the crystal. "Then we move before dawn. If we reach the ridge before sunrise, I can send the message." Eli glanced toward the dark forest, then back at her glowing eyes. "All right. But we'll need supplies, weapons, and a miracle." She tilted her head. "Do humans still believe in miracles?" Eli smiled faintly. "Only when we run out of luck." Lyra looked up through the cabin window at the endless stars. "Then maybe the stars will help us," she said quietly. He followed her gaze. Out there, beyond the silent night sky, an empire hunted them both. Yet somehow, in that small wooden cabin beneath the stars, they had already started fighting back, and neither of them knew it. But their names were about to become legends whispered across the galaxy. Dawn broke quietly over the forest, painting the treetops in soft gold. The creek behind Eli Turner's cabin glimmered like liquid light, hiding the blood and smoke from the night before. For a moment it almost looked peaceful again, but peace was a lie now. Inside the cabin, Lyra packed a small satchel with the crystal, some food, and a blanket. Her movements were fast, careful, silent. Eli checked his old plasma rifle, then filled a canteen with water. Neither spoke much. They both felt it. The heavy quiet before trouble. Then came the sound. A distant hum, steady and growing louder. Not one drone this time. Several. Eli's head snapped toward the window. A silver shape moved between the trees, then another. Light shimmered off armor. "They're here," he whispered. Lyra's hands trembled. "Already? We destroyed their scout last night." "They probably traced the crash site," he said grimly. "Grab your things. Stay behind me." But it was too late for escape. The forest outside came alive with motion, soldiers in shining armor fanning out between the trees, their visors glowing faint blue. The Venari patrol. They surrounded the cabin in silence, disciplined and patient like predators. Eli closed the door softly and drew the curtains. His heart pounded. "Hide the crystal," he said quickly. Lyra looked around, then slipped the glowing shard into a small wooden box and tucked it inside the hearth, covering it with ashes. She wiped her hands and turned to him. "What will you do?" she asked. Eli gave her a calm look. "Same thing I do every morning. Pretend I'm just a farmer." Before she could answer, the door shook. 3 sharp knocks that rattled the hinges. Eli took a deep breath and opened it. Outside stood 3 Venari soldiers. Their armor gleamed under the sun, symbols of the Empire etched into their chest plates. The leader, a tall figure with silver armor and a narrow mask, spoke first. "Human resident," the voice said, metallic and cold. "We are conducting a routine search for an escaped prisoner. Step aside." Eli crossed his arms. "Haven't seen anyone but the squirrels," he said. The leader tilted his head. "Our scans indicate human interference in a restricted incident last night. A downed drone. Perhaps you've heard the explosion?" Eli shrugged. "Didn't hear a thing. Storm must have carried the sound." The soldier stepped forward, visor glinting. "We will confirm." 2 others pushed past Eli and entered the cabin. His muscles tensed, but he forced himself to stay still. They scanned the walls with glowing wrist devices, beams of light sweeping over the furniture. Under the floorboards, Lyra pressed herself against the shadows. Her heart thudded in her ears. Every step above her sounded like thunder. One soldier paused near the rug covering the trapdoor. Eli's hand twitched toward his rifle, but he stopped himself. "Old cabin?" Eli said quickly. "Wood creaks everywhere. Built it myself." The soldier gave him a cold look, then turned away. After a moment, they finished scanning. "No signs of life other than the human," one said. The leader nodded. "Then we proceed." He looked at Eli. "If you see anything unusual, report it to the Empire immediately. Harboring fugitives is punishable by death." Eli smiled thinly. Noted. They turned and left, boots crunching on the dirt path. The sound of engines hummed as they moved deeper into the forest, leaving the cabin in silence once more. Eli waited until the sound faded completely before speaking. "They're gone," he said softly. The trapdoor lifted slowly and Lyra crawled out, shaking. Her golden eyes shimmered with fear. "They were so close," she whispered. "They could have found me." "Almost," Eli said, sitting down heavily. "But they didn't." She stood quietly for a moment, then looked at him. "You lied for me." "They could have killed you." Eli gave a tired grin. "Guess I'm not very good at obeying empires." Lyra stared at him with a mix of confusion and awe. She didn't understand this kind of defiance. It was reckless, human, and something her kind rarely did for strangers. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why do you help me?" Eli met her eyes. "Because you looked like someone who'd lost everything." For a heartbeat, neither spoke. The light through the window caught her silver hair and the faint scars on her wrist. She blinked quickly as if trying not to cry. "No one ever said that to me before." "Well," he said, standing up and grabbing his rifle, "you're hearing it now." She smiled faintly, a fragile curve of lips that warmed the cold air. But far in the forest, the patrol leader stopped beside his armored vehicle. He turned to a holographic communicator flickering in his hand. A female face appeared, stern, sharp, and familiar. "Report," she ordered. "We found the crash site," the soldier said. "No sign of the fugitive. But a human nearby gave false readings. I suspect he knows something." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Search again tonight. If the human interferes, eliminate him." The image vanished. The commander looked toward the direction of Eli's cabin. His golden eyes gleamed behind the mask. Inside the cabin, unaware of the shadow creeping closer, Lyra leaned by the window and whispered, "They will come again." Eli nodded. "Then we'll be ready." The creek outside flowed quietly, the same place where two strangers' lives had crossed. But now it wasn't just a hiding place, it was a battlefield waiting for nightfall. The sun slipped behind the mountains, and the forest turned to gold, then to gray, and finally to darkness. The creek behind Eli's cabin whispered softly under the moonlight, calm and innocent. Too calm. Eli Turner could feel it in his chest, that heavy silence before something terrible happens. He checked his rifle again. The power cell was half drained, but it would have to do. Lyra sat by the window, her hands clutching the small wooden box that hid the crystal. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned bright like tiny stars. "Eli," she said softly. "They'll come tonight. I can feel it." He didn't argue. "I know." The patrol hadn't really left that morning. He'd seen the faint glint of armor deep in the trees, the shimmer of movement near the ridge. They were waiting, watching, for the right moment. Lyra stood slowly and walked toward the fire. "If they find us, you must destroy the crystal," she whispered. "Promise me." Eli looked at her, then shook his head. "You really think I'd let them erase what you risked everything for?" She frowned. "If they capture it, all the suffering I caused means nothing." He walked closer, his voice calm but firm. "If they come for us, Lyra, we fight. We don't surrender and we don't destroy the truth." Her lips trembled, caught between fear and belief. Then the first explosion hit. The window shattered inward, spraying glass across the cabin. The ground trembled as fire bloomed in the trees outside. Eli ducked low, grabbing his rifle, while Lyra stumbled backward, clutching the crystal box to her chest. "They found us," she gasped. Eli kicked the door open and stepped out into chaos. The forest glowed with orange light, burning leaves, falling branches, smoke curling into the night sky. Drones buzzed overhead, firing blue streaks of plasma through the trees. He fired back, quick and precise. The first drone burst into sparks, crashing into the creek. "Run!" he shouted. Lyra followed him out the back, barefoot and terrified. The fire spread fast, licking at the cabin walls. The peaceful home that once saved her now burned like a signal to the heavens. They ran through the woods, the air thick with smoke. Every breath hurt. Every flash of light made them duck and stumble. Eli could hear the soldiers shouting commands in their alien tongue, closing in, surrounding them. Lyra clutched the crystal tighter. "There's a clearing near the creek bend," she cried. "I can activate the beacon there. It will send the data." "Go," Eli shouted. "I'll cover you." He turned and fired again, dropping another soldier who emerged through the fire. Plasma bolts hissed past him, searing the ground. A tree exploded behind him, showering him with ash and sparks. Lyra ran to the water's edge where the moonlight reflected across the creek. Her hands shook as she pulled the crystal free and pressed its surface. The crystal pulsed, then began to glow brighter and brighter, sending beams of blue light into the night sky. Eli saw it, then saw the danger. A sniper drone turned, locking onto her signal. "Lyra, down!" he shouted, diving forward. The bolt fired. Eli threw himself in front of it. It hit him square in the chest. The blast knocked him backward into the water. For a second, everything went silent. Lyra screamed, her voice breaking into the smoke-filled air. She dropped to her knees, hands trembling as she pulled Eli's body from the creek. "Eli, no, stay with me!" she cried. His chest plate was scorched, blood seeping between the cracks. His eyes flickered open, faint but steady. "Did it send?" he whispered. Lyra looked up. The beam of light had grown into a full signal, shooting high into the stars. "Yes," she said through tears. "It's gone. It's in the network now." Eli smiled weakly. "Good. Then it was worth it." More soldiers broke through the burning trees, shouting commands. Lyra turned, her eyes full of fury. The water around her began to glow, the energy of her species awakening. The air trembled as she raised her hand. The creek erupted in light. The soldiers staggered, blinded, as the water surged upward like living fire, slamming into their armor. The drones shorted out one by one, falling into the flames. The forest roared as energy spread through every drop of water, turning the quiet stream into a storm. Lyra screamed, not in pain, but in rage. The power burst from her, raw and uncontrollable, fueled by grief. The soldiers retreated, shouting for backup. Within minutes, the clearing was empty except for the fire, the smoke, and the sound of the rushing creek. When it was over, Lyra dropped to her knees, gasping for air. The glow around her faded, and she turned back to Eli. He was lying half in the water, half on the grass, staring at the stars above. His breathing was shallow, but he was still alive. She pressed her forehead to his, whispering through her tears. "You foolish human," she said softly. "You gave me your world," he smiled faintly. "Guess I didn't need it anymore." Above them, the beacon light faded into the night sky, vanishing among the stars. But the message was already sent. Across the galaxy, human colonies were waking to a truth too big to hide. The Empire's lies were burning, just like the forest behind them. And beside the glowing creek, under a sky full of fire and smoke, a wounded human and a broken alien held onto each other as the world began to change. Smoke still hung over the valley when morning came. The once green forest was now gray and silent, its trees charred, its air heavy with the smell of ash. The creek that once shimmered like glass now carried soot and memories of fire. Lyra knelt by the water's edge, her silver hair tangled, her hands trembling as she washed blood from her fingers. Beside her lay Eli Turner, his chest wrapped in bandages torn from her own cloak. His breathing was shallow but steady. Each breath sounded like a whisper against the wind. She looked down at him, this human, this stranger who had changed everything. When she first saw him, she thought he was weak. All humans seemed fragile to her kind, soft skin, short lives, small hearts. But Eli had proven her wrong. He had faced soldiers armed with plasma rifles, risked death a dozen times, and still he smiled at her like she was worth saving. Lyra brushed her fingers against his cheek. His skin was warm despite the cold air. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. "You shouldn't have taken that hit for me." Eli stirred, his eyes flickering open. They were clouded with pain, but when he saw her, he smiled faintly. "Did it work?" Lyra nodded slowly. "The signal went out. The data is already spreading. Every human colony will see what they've done. The truth is out." Eli let out a shaky breath. "Good, maybe now. They'll stop pretending the Empire's clean." She looked toward the sky. A faint shimmer still lingered, the trail of her beacon disappearing into the stars. "The Empire will deny it," she said softly. "They will call it lies. But the seed has been planted." Eli chuckled weakly. "Seeds grow, don't they?" She smiled through her tears. "Yes, they do." He winced, clutching his side. "You need to go, Lyra. They'll come again. Finish what we started." "No," she said firmly. "I won't leave you here to die." "Wasn't planning to," he whispered. "Just don't stay because you feel guilty. Stay because you want to." Lyra stared at him, speechless. No one in her entire life had ever spoken to her like that. Not as a soldier, not as a scientist, not even as a person. But this human, broken and bleeding, still gave her a choice. Tears filled her golden eyes. You don't understand. My people destroyed your kind, and yet you still protect me. Why? Eli looked at her for a long moment, his gaze soft. Because when I saw your face that night by the creek, it wasn't the face of an enemy. It was someone trying to survive. Her breath caught. The memory of that night. The water, the moonlight, the quiet fear in her heart rushed back. She reached out and held his hand. You changed me, Eli Turner, she said quietly. Your kindness, it's louder than their cruelty. For a while, neither spoke. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath. Then Eli's hand went limp for a moment, his eyes closing again. Panic shot through Lyra's chest. Eli, she cried, shaking him gently. Stay with me. He groaned faintly. Still here. Just tired. She laughed through her tears, pressing her forehead against his. You humans, she whispered. You never stop scaring me. Hours passed as she tended to his wounds. She cleaned the burns, changed the bandages, and used the little energy left in her body to heal him with faint pulses of biolight. The glow from her palms flickered as she worked, fading slowly as exhaustion took over. When she finally stopped, the sun was low again. Eli was asleep, breathing evenly. Lyra sat beside him, her body trembling from fatigue. She looked toward the horizon where smoke met the sky. In the distance, faint lights moved. Ships. Not Imperial. Human rescue vessels. Her message had reached them faster than she expected. She smiled faintly. You did it, Eli, she whispered. You woke them. As the ships descended, Lyra covered Eli's body with her cloak and stood up weakly. She raised her hand toward the sky, signaling the humans with a small flare of light from her wristband. They responded instantly, a beam of white scanning down, recognizing the distress signal. When they landed, the rescuers rushed toward her. They were cautious, aiming their scanners, but when they saw the wounded man beside her, they lowered their weapons. He's human, one shouted. Get him aboard! Lyra stepped back as they lifted Eli onto a stretcher. A medic turned to her. You're hurt too, come with us. She hesitated. He is more important. Save him first. The medic nodded and ran toward the ship. Lyra followed slowly, her eyes never leaving Eli's still face. As the ship's doors closed, she took one last look at the burning forest below, the place where everything changed, the place where a human's face had made her question everything she'd ever believed. She touched the side of his hand and whispered softly, Your face changed my world too. The engines roared to life, lifting them into the endless blue sky. Beneath them, the fire continued to burn, but above was hope. For the first time in her life, Lyra wasn't running. She was flying toward something new, and in the reflection of the ship's glass, her golden eyes softened as she saw his face again, peaceful, alive, and full of the quiet strength that had saved her. It was the face that changed everything. When Eli Turner opened his eyes again, he was surrounded by light. Not sunlight through old cabin windows, but the sterile glow of a medbay ceiling. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. The beeping machines, the steady hum of engines, it all felt too clean, too quiet, too unreal. Then he heard her voice. You're awake, Lyra said softly. He turned his head, slow and heavy, and there she was, no longer in torn robes or with ash on her skin. She sat beside his bed, wrapped in a simple white tunic, her silver hair brushed, her eyes tired but warm. Eli tried to smile. Guess I didn't die, huh? Lyra let out a shaky laugh. Not for lack of trying. He blinked, trying to focus. The ship's walls were made of silver alloy, smooth and human-built. Outside the viewport, stars drifted past like falling snow. Where are we? Human rescue vessel Argent Dawn, Lyra said. They found us 2 days ago. You've been unconscious since then. Eli groaned. 2 days. That's a new record. You were lucky, she said, voice quiet. Your injuries were serious. The medic said another few minutes, and she stopped, her throat tightening. But I made it. Eli finished gently. She nodded, blinking back the tears. Yes, you made it. They sat in silence for a moment, both staring out the window. Beyond the ship, a nearby planet glowed pale blue, a new world waiting below. Eli turned to her. What about the signal? The crystal? Lyra's golden eyes lit up. It reached them, Eli. Every human colony in the Outer Rim received the data. The footage, the records, everything. The Empire's lies are breaking apart. He smiled faintly. So the truth's out. More than that, she said. Some of my people have started questioning the Empire's rule. Others are surrendering. You changed the course of the galaxy. He laughed weakly. Guess I did more than fix lanterns this time. Lyra reached out and placed her hand over his. You did more than that, she whispered. You showed me something my people forgot existed. What's that? Mercy. Her voice trembled on the word. She looked away, ashamed, as if mercy was something dangerous to admit. Eli squeezed her hand lightly. Then maybe it's time your people learn again. Lyra smiled faintly. Maybe it's time all of us learn. Weeks passed aboard Argent Dawn. Eli recovered slowly, walking the corridors under the soft hum of the engines. Lyra stayed close, sometimes silent, sometimes curious about everything human. How they joked, how they argued, how they cared for each other. The crew didn't quite know what to make of her at first. Some whispered that she was dangerous. Others just stared in awe. But as days turned to weeks, they saw the truth. The alien woman was no soldier anymore. She was something else entirely. A bridge. When they finally reached Farron 3 again, the forest world was scarred but alive. Green shoots were already growing among the ashes. The creek behind the ruins of Eli's cabin still flowed, its sound gentle and endless. He stood at its edge, staring at what used to be home. Lyra stood beside him holding a small bag filled with seeds. You really came back, he said quietly. I promised I'd rebuild, she answered. He looked at her. You don't owe me anything, Lyra. Her golden eyes softened. You're wrong, Eli Turner. You gave me a reason to live. She knelt by the creek and pressed her hands into the soil. Tiny lights shimmered where her fingers touched, and in seconds, small plants sprouted from the ground, blue leaves glowing softly like stars. Eli smiled. You're cheating with alien magic again. She laughed, a sound pure and full echoing through the trees. It's called science, human. Together they rebuilt, one plank, one seed, one sunrise at a time. The cabin rose again, simpler but stronger, a home not just for a man or an alien, but for something new. Sometimes human patrols would visit, bringing news. The Empire had fractured. The Venari Queen was in hiding. Rumors spread of peace talks between human and alien leaders with Lyra's data as the foundation. Eli never took credit. He said he just found someone in the creek. At night they sat outside listening to the water. The stars reflected on the surface just as they had the night they met. Lyra often looked up, quiet and thoughtful. What are you thinking? Eli would ask. She'd smile. That once I thought the stars were cold. Now they look warm. He looked at her, at the way the moonlight touched her face, and said, maybe it's because you stopped running from them. She turned to him and whispered, maybe it's because you showed me what they really mean. The wind carried the sound of the creek soft and endless. Two hearts, one human, one alien, sat side by side beneath the same stars that once divided their worlds. For the first time, the galaxy didn't feel so big. It felt like home. And as dawn broke across the horizon, the light touched the cabin's roof, the stream's edge, and the faces of two beings who had changed the universe just by choosing kindness over fear. The human who saw beauty in an alien face, and the alien who learned to see humanity in her own. It was a new dawn, and it was only the beginning.